guys, Wolvie here. This is RWBY Volume 8, Chapter 9. And this is for the RWBY playlist for the channel. You guys know the drill, the usual disclaimer. Any opinion in this video is my opinion only. So, with that, the name of the newest chapter is called Witch. This is publicly available to everybody. Just a little, quote-unquote heads up. There was a slight delay for Chapter 10 for reasons that is beyond understandable. I mean, I do hope that the people in Texas are doing okay now. Anyway, so the title of this particular chapter is called Witch. So you have all this stuff here. You have this little snippet, all that stuff. So, this is pretty much the Yang, Jean, and Ren point of view sort of thing. So basically they go in there with to try to get Oscar. And this is one of those times where I called it. I called the whole thing with Emerald, you know, her turning her back on Salem and is possibly Cinder now. Because we do know in the first half of Volume 8 that, lo and behold, Cinder got Watts out of the prison, so that's a whole nother thing altogether. So we have that. And now, like I said, I called it with Emerald, you know, turning her back on Salem, because in the hint I remember is from Volume 7, how the look that Salem was giving, it scared, and part of my language, it scared the living shit out of Emerald. This is like, you know, it's like, you know what, I gotta get out of this ASAP, that sort of thing. Now, the whole thing, like I said, I called it here when Emerald, you know, turning her back on Salem. And then the whole thing with Hazel, I mean, he was a bit of a wild card in my personal opinion, but the fact that, you know, he's stepping up to the plate, turning his back on Salem as well, you know, the whole thing with, you know, doing certain tricks from Salem, it looks like Oscar's doing the same thing in return. He's got a couple tricks left up in his sleeve. The way they had that whole cliffhanger at the very end, I'm very freaking surprised they're leaving Oscar behind. I don't know what's going to happen from here on out, but I do hope that Oscar makes it out okay. And, you know, the whole thing with Hazel, I mean, I'm not going to be entirely surprised what happens from here on out, but we do know that when it came to the quote-unquote whale, Jean, Ren, Yang, and Emerald were able to get out of that. So we do know that Emerald's no longer, most likely no longer on Salem's side, but the whole thing with Cinder still remains with Emerald, because the whole thing, that connection with Emerald and Cinder from back in the day. So with that bit, I mean, I don't know where Chapter 10 is going to lead in sense of like the point of view. We do see a little bit the whole thing with Winter. You see members of Team Funky joining up arms that regard. So it's a bit of like how the remaining 5 chapters are going to show up, you know, 10 through 14, knowing that Volume 9 is going to be a shorter volume. So that's that on that. I don't know what's going to happen with Hazel. Me personally, I won't be surprised if he dies in this volume. And the thing is, with Emerald, she might have a change of heart. You know, she may just say F Cinder altogether as well, because she just got out of there. She escaped the whole thing from Salem. But again, the whole thing with Cinder remains. And the one thing I've been thinking about the whole thing regarding Ruby and Blake, you know, from Chapter 8, is like, I won't be surprised if those two become official, you know, the whole Ladybug aspect. And the kind of reason why, I mean, that's going to be a separate video altogether for a separate day. That sort of thing. That's something I'm looking forward to, like, thinking about, not thinking about doing, but thinking about, like, you know, how to get my thoughts together on that one. Because it's like, there's a lot of people are speculating that Yang and Blake are become canon, but as I stated before, if they do become canon, I don't think they're going to remain canon, which the whole thing with becoming and remaining are two completely different quote-unquote animals to consider. But the thing is, you know, Ruby has the support of Blake as of, you know, from Chapter 8, and the question kind of remains, once if and when Yang decides to reunite with the rest of Team RWBY, how will the dynamics change? And like I said, the whole thing with RWBY becoming the quote-unquote catalyst for one-sided Bumblebee, it's like it's not the way that people would think. And I wish people would see that. Now, and the reason why I say it like that, this is a bit of a quote-unquote teaser of how I think it is the way of thinking, you know, how people approach things, how people want to do things. No, the less violence or the more violence, etc. So, do a super quick recap for which is Volume 8, Chapter 9. I called it with Emerald. I was honestly on the fence with Hazel, but he's like turning his back on Salem. Oscar's still left behind, but Emerald escaped with them. I think Emerald's going to become a huge key into stopping Salem once and for all. And the reason why I feel Emerald's going to be the key here is because, again, for Volume 7, if you took a look at Emerald's face, it's one of those things where it's like, I need to do something better with my life. I can't be on Salem's side any longer. I don't know if Cinder's going to be any better. Let's just, let me check it out with RWBY and company, see, hopefully things will be a little bit better for me. And that's like from the eyes of Emerald. Now with Hazel, I don't know if he's going to survive. I personally don't think he will. Oscar, I think we're going to be seeing a merge of him and Aspen. I don't know how they're going to be looking like once the merge is complete. That sort of thing. But I do think Emerald's going to become a bigger key in later volumes if it goes beyond Volume 9. Oh, so with that, let me check the time here real quick because I do have another video I'm posting onto the channel as I speak. It is Dissidio Final Fantasy Opera Amiya related. But yeah, so just a super quick recap. It's not going to be too long of a video because like I said, I have another video that is being posted to the channel right now. What do I think is going to happen for the future chapters for the remainder of Volume 8? I think, like I said, Emerald's going to be a bigger key here. Regarding the surviving members of Ace Ops, is that, they're kind of up in the air in sense of like who lives, who dies. Team Funky joining up Aesop's side with Winter, that sort of thing. And speaking of Winter, I forgot to mention this, is that I do feel she's going to have an interesting decision to make upon what's probably going to happen to Ironwood because, again, Watts is out of prison. And no one was really there to really stop certain things, you know, including Jacques, including Robin, as well as Crow. Now, the whole intro involving, you know, Robin and Crow, it's like, I think we're going to be seeing, like, more, like, interaction between those two as to the contribution Crow could still make, you know, reaching out to certain people. And the bird that Yang saw, it looks like Raven has returned. I think she's going to be the one. This is where, now, the whole thing that post-credit scene, post-volume 5, yeah, I was still a little bit on the fence on it. You couldn't tell who was, like, showing up to Tai Yang's house. Now, we do know that Tai Yang was, like, saw the video from RWBY, and I think Raven's going to be the one from the, post-credit scene for Volume 5. She's the one that somehow makes it to Patch, lets Tai Yang know exactly what's going on. So, part of me, you know, and the reason why I'm on the fence is because the whole thing with Bernie Burns. I hope he's doing well overseas, that sort of thing. But I don't know if it's going to be Raven or if it's going to be Crow. Now I'm starting to think it's going to be Raven. Somehow gets to Patch, lets Tai Yang know, hey, you gotta buckle up. It gets over to Atlas because your girls are in trouble. And that sort of thing. Now, with the fight between Yang and Salem, it's like, yo. Now, it's like, because remember the whole thing towards the end of Volume 7 with RWBY, how she reacted when Salem was mentioning Summer Rose. And now, how the whole thing with Yang, she wasn't as affected. Now, I'm glad, you know, Yang said Summer Rose's name. So it looks like the whole overreacting on Yang's end, I mean, is probably a little bit misconstrued on her end. She's probably realizing certain things here and there. especially when you take into the factor that Blake believes in Ruby. Like, from start to this point. And that was really heartwarming to see, but it comes down to the whole thing that how does Blake feel about Yang? And the thing is with the whole one-sided aspect, hint from Ren, is that I don't think that Blake's going to reciprocate. Now, the whole thing with Yang from Volume 1, you know, how she looks at boys, all that stuff like that. That could be one thing, but I think Blake's going to be the one with the change of heart. And it comes down to the interaction they had in Volume 7, where it's like, Yang's like, you know, use violence to solve problems, as opposed to Blake is like, try the more peaceful approach, if you can do so. And I think the whole way with Ruby reacted to the whole Faunus Grim combination, I think this is where Blake supports Ruby's vision of what's to be done more so than Yang, and that's going to be a big reason why Bumblebee becomes one-sided. Is because the ideology for Blake and Yang are becoming a bit too different, and sometimes you don't have to have much to get along or whatever, but sometimes having too little in common hurts just as much, if not more so. So with that, I'm actually going to get going because I do need to get a little bit of lunch in my system. I am on my paid time off for the week, so that's that on that. And I'm actually done with this video. With Wolvie here, signing off. I will catch you all on the flip side.